Hello everybody and welcome back to a new video about AdventureCraft. Today we are talking about the special function blocks you see here and how these will work. The most important one is probably the trigger block, so we start off with that. And we also want to take the triggered door. Don't confuse it with the locked door, it's a different one. And when we activate our debug mode, you can see I've prepared something here. So let me explain how triggers will work. When I deactivate my debug mode, you can see those blocks are hidden now. And when I walk through it, you will see, I've just triggered this block and this trigger is connected to these triggered doors. So for example, if I just want to trigger this block, then I can mark that block and you will see only that block will appear when I walk through it. So trigger is basically a block for the player when he walks through or gets in contact with it. Alright, and also you want to make sure that your cursor is always in the right hand, because sometimes if it's in the left hand, then you try to left click the trigger block or right click even and you see nothing will happen. So please make sure to always keep the cursor in the right hand. Okay, and as you can see I have no neighboring trigger blocks here. They are all touching each other, and when I now mark the area, let's select the whole door and then right click, then you can see every block is found and automatically hooked up to the door. Now we're talking about the trigger inverter, and as the name may suggest, trigger inverter is when I deactivate the debug mode, you can see the door is already there, and now when I walk through my triggers, the door disappears. Okay, the next important thing is you see the trigger will get the signal and then it returns back to its original state. So one way to fix this would be to take a lever, hook it up to a special block, and then we can save the lever state so the door stays open. Or we go to the next block, which is the memory block, which is this here. And with that you can see, okay, the door is open again as the first example, but now it goes into a memory block and then to the door. And what will happen? Let me demonstrate. Okay, I'm out of the trigger area and you can see the door stays closed. Even if I go through it again, nothing will change. It stays now closed forever, or at least until it gets a reset. Here you can see a couple more fields. So use current selection is as the one before, your marked area. Activate on trigger is when I walk right into the trigger. Activate on detrigger means when I leave my trigger area, so I am in and then I go out and then it will be activated. And reset or don't reset explains itself basically, so when you die, then the door will be open. I can demonstrate it. So as you can see, the door is closed, and when I now die, as you can see, the door disappeared and my spawn point is a bit weird. So yeah, as you can see, it works perfectly. What's also very interesting about the trigger blocks, you have a second mode here, which says reset target or trigger target. And this one is on reset target. So as you maybe can imagine, not only death can reset a memory block, but also different triggers or levers when set to reset mode. Okay, next up, we've got the healing or damage block. So we hook it up to a trigger, then we can set up if it should heal us or if it should damage us. One unit is basically a quarter of a heart. So for example, if I damage one, then you can see I have one heart left. But when I heal, for example, 12, then you can see full health. All right. Next up, we've got the spawner block. As the name suggests, you set your spawn point. So for example, there we have like 3 in a row connected. So if we walk through one and then we die here, and as you can see, the respawn point is now set to the spawn block I've just walked through. You can also hook them up to a trigger. So for example, if I go through this trigger here and then die, then you can see, now I'm up here. The next block is the clip block, which prevents the player from walking through it, and it's invisible when debug mode is deactivated. We have cracked cobblestone, cracked stone, a locked door and a boss door. So first of all, these cracked walls you may know from Zelda. So if you take a bomb and throw it, they get destroyed. And for the doors, you have 2 variants that will work. Either placing 2x2 to create this small door, or 3x3 to create an even bigger door. The silver key is for the boss door, obviously. So this won't work. And that's for the gold keys. I just opened them. But is there a way to reset that? Because when I activate my debug mode and deactivate it, it's still saved as opened. So another way of resetting those, debug mode activated and then press F6. And as you can see, the message down there says resetting all blocks in loaded chunks. And that means when I now deactivate my debug mode, everything is closed again. And also these memory blocks have been reset. Okay, next up, we've got the darkness block. So that basically explains itself. I've casted now a shadow. You can see the more darkness blocks we place, the darker it gets in the middle. so it gets surrounded by blocks. Okay, next to the darkness blocks, we also have light bulb blocks. And that will do the exact opposite, obviously. So I can place it down and also I can increase or decrease the value. Also, really quick, I will go over the trigger stick, which is on the last page of the items. So the trigger stick is a different way of triggering the blocks for testing if you don't have a trigger ready. So you cannot trigger a trigger, obviously. So you can just trigger something that a trigger could be selected. So this memory block here, if I hit it with left click, and you can see it's just activated now. Okay, next up we've got the Customizable Mob Spawner. And please be aware, that's the wrong block. That's just the basic normal monster spawner. So you wanna go to the function block page and then select the Customizable Mob Spawner. And when you right click it with the cursor tool, you see a huge menu. The entity is a pig selected. Entities alive tells you when you already triggered the block, if there's still enemies around for this spawner. Respawn in 0 seconds, so you can have a respawn delay. For example, every 10 seconds when the player goes through the trigger, new enemies will spawn when every enemy previously has been defeated. You can select the spawn count. We can spawn an item, which we've got in our right hand, but then we also have to select item, or else if we do it like that, it won't work. So it's basically these are tied together. This will select the item and this will be the item that's dropping then. So let's select a slime. Then you have the second page, which is the select drops. There you can see, okay, you can select it to drop a key, to drop a heart container, to drop a boss key, to drop nothing. And then select triggers. You can see the trigger page to trigger additional blocks. For example, if you want to have a boss room, you want to make sure that once I go through this, the door behind me is closed. So let me demonstrate it. Triggerable door. Let's not make it too fancy here. So for example, we select our first trigger. The undeath trigger doesn't have a connection line, but it will work nonetheless. So for example, I set the undeath trigger to this memory block to then make this bridge appear. So if I now deactivate the trigger mode, you see nothing is here. When I trigger the boss, I'm locked here. And when I kill the slime, a key is dropped and the stairs will appear. Next up, we've got the redstone trigger and the redstone power. When you want to work with vanilla stuff that only gets triggered by redstone, you can use the redstone power, hook it up to a redstone trigger, and then, for example, I will keep it activated, and then you can see it activated the redstone. So that's also a different way to have it permanently selected or just as a button press. Okay, next up we've gotta talk about the weather block. We right click the weather block and we can see nothing will change. So if we wanna change the temperature, we can do so by clicking this button, and then we can offset the temperature. If we change the offset to -1, then the snow won't melt, and if we set it to 1, the snow will melt. Reset the time to this specific value. So let's make a day again. We can also increase the rate the time is progressing, and I can turn it all the way up to 16. And we can also start thundering, stop thundering. Precipitation is basically raining. In combination with the temperature offset, if we now set it to -1, it would mean snow. It's no snowing. And if you make it to 1, then it's raining. And the snow will melt as well. So next up, we're gonna talk about the music block, which is basically straightforward. So let's hook it up to our trigger. And then we right click it, select our music. And the only thing we can change is the fade out and fade in to start and stop the music. And yeah, here we can insert all our music. And you can hear the music is now playing. So that's a way to make sure that you change the music. For example, when you enter a cave, a building or something like that, a different city or whatever you build, then you can just hook it up to a music block and change the music. Same with message block, and that can be used to play sounds. For example, if I press a lever, which is a secret, then you hear the secret sound. And you can also enter a message, and we can play a sound or don't play a sound. And then you can see in the chat is the message from Billy, hey there. But as you will just now see, if we wait a bit, the message disappears. And normally you don't have an option to press T to open the chat again. So what you will do as a player is press F4 and then open the chat to read the message again. But that's really ugly. It's not really made for dialogue. So my recommendation is screw the message function from this message block and just use it as a sound block basically to play back sounds. Alright, so next up we have the pushable block and the trigger pushable. So the trigger pushable is this block that just works like the normal trigger block. So we can select another block, for example, then use that as current selection. You can see if it worked because you have the coordinates here. We also need the power glove in order to push and pull it. We can, based on the hand, we've got the power glove in, right or left click to push it and control right or left click to pull it. And when we push onto the trigger block, you can see whatever we selected will be triggered. Next up, we've got the timer block. It works just like a trigger, so you can do something like a triple setup. This goes into the timer block and the timer block goes into a message block. And you can use the trigger reset again. You can delay it and then you can have it active and deactive for a couple of seconds. You can also switch the input mode if you want to enter a number or just use the sliders. First, we add a delay for 1 second for the message to appear. Then we connect it to a bridge, which is active for 5 seconds. As you can see, it gets annoying pretty fast. So that's what the deactivate button is for. Okay, now we've got to talk about the fan blocks. This will let me float a bit. And what I could also do, I'm not sure. Yeah, if I right click it with my hand, yeah, the cursor works as well, then I can just rotate it basically. So we can activate it and deactivate it with normal redstone, which means if you want to hook it up to a far away block, you can just use the redstone power again. We ignore the script block for now because there will be a different video. Okay, really quick, the teleport block is also something that you can hook up to a trigger. I would recommend, if you want to work with the teleport block, then you just select the nudge tool so you can offset your selected area by 1. Then right click it to select that area and now, boop, now it works. Next we have the effect block. So we hook it up and there you can see a huge user interface again. So we have different kind of effects. First page is the particles. So we can, for example, create 3 particles. The rand X, Y, and Z will adjust the red box, so the area of effect for the particle you selected. Then we can offset it, move it in the air, so we adjust the y-axis. We want to move it to the right, so we can offset the x. The arguments, that determines the direction of the particles. So if we want to move our particles to the right, we with a lot of speed, we would do that. And that's basically randomization, as far as I know. So we can randomize the x and y direction, so it goes a bit random in this direction. Let me test it now. So if I now trigger this, yeah, you can see there's flames going to the right. And when we increase the randomness, then you can see, okay, now some of those go into the other direction. And yeah, same with the y direction. So we increase the y direction, then they should go vertically. Yeah, no, it looks kind of like a tornado a bit. So yeah, with that you can create different particle effects. Then we have the second tab, which is the fog color. You can have fog, let's no particles, change fog color. So you can change, the fog color and the density. So you can create a custom fog. You need to be careful because on map reload, it will just disappear. So it has to be triggered again. So that's also something I would suggest you doing over a script. Next tab, we have the overlay. So you can create an overlay. Any graphics that we have in this folder, then we can display it. Change overlay, of course. And then we can put a graphic in front of us. But now I can move and I can't see. So for that, change overlay, remove overlay. And then we need our trigger stick. So yeah, that's a good way to soft lock you. So the URL block is basically just the message block, but you can insert any URL that's valid, or else it won't even open that. Then trigger that, and then you get a prompt to open this URL. That can be used for like linking your socials or map creation and stuff like that. Okay, next up, we've got the camera block. We gotta right click it with our cursor, or I think it also works with the hand, but always just use the cursor in the right hand. Set active editing camera, you can see the message in the chat. And then you can use linear interpolation, quadratic interpolation, and skip to the first point. And game runs, game pauses basically. So for now we leave it to quadratic interpolation and pause game. So that happens, what happens, sorry, if I go through this, you can see nothing happens because we've not selected any camera point. So that's the thing that I don't really like. You need to basically create a camera path with commands. So the command is camera add and then the times in seconds. So for example, we do 1. Then we have our first camera point, which is 1 second and looks in this direction. I've created 2 more points, so in this example our total cutscene length is 5 seconds. Then because we've set quadratic interpolation, it will round a bit. You can see it good with this angle here, and then go to this point. Rather, when we do linear interpolation, we will create a straight up line to this new point. Now we've got the block storage block. Block storage, as the name suggests, store blocks with it. So for example, this cube, we will use current selection, and when I delete it and hook it up to a trigger, what will happen is, the block just comes back. So maybe, let me get a second one. Okay, so create and delete your selection. Resave set selection will update the storing of the same selected area that's currently set in the block, so it kind of replaces it if there was a change, and load save data is for playtesting or to get it back without the need of triggering it. The NPC stick will create an NPC, and when I left click it with the NPC stick, it needs to be in the right hand. Left click, then I can give him a name and a chat message. So then I can select a player skin if I would have any player skin, if it can be attacked or can't be attacked, if it should track the player, and it should be pathing. Then I can also hook up some scripts. So now when I deactivate the mode, you can see he will look at me, and when I interact with him, he will just keep repeating the message that I set to him. So nothing really special. And with the pathing block, that's also something special. When I create the pathing block, for example, those 2 pathing blocks, then I select the first one, because the last NPC, let me create a new NPC, and let's name him Geo. Geo just says hi, and if I now right click the block, set path NPC Geo, because that's the last NPC I've interacted with. So if I want to create a path for Billy, I need to open Billy with the NPC stick, and we need to hook up the first path block to a trigger, and then we need to, basically create multiple path blocks. So this is our first block, which is activated by this trigger or any other kind of mechanism. Then we want to select the next block and choose that as current selection or target basically. And we want to do the same. Make sure to set Billy here, and then select this block, use target. And with this one, we want to select this. So it basically loops. So we set Billy and that as a target. And now if we trigger this, then we can see he goes all the way through this, and then, back to the start. And as you can see, he now loops until we reset the thing. Then he goes back to the start, and it all starts again. Alright, let's talk about the store block. So basically, if I right click it, we can set the items which are currently in our hands. So for example, that's in my right hand and that's in my left hand. So if we now set items, trade rubber for cursor. So we've selected our trade. We wanna do it just once. I've built a small mechanism to unlock a door with the trade trigger. Then the door is open. And you can see I cannot trade anymore because we just set it to be 1 trade. And then we can reset it again. If you don't want to use it as a trade and just as a receiver, you can just go empty with the right hand. With the left hand and with the right hand. And then you set items. Then you get receive 1. And if you change it, then you can do it to insert 1. So it doesn't have to be a trade. It can also be like insert a key to open the store, maybe. Yeah, and that's every function block in AdventureCraft. I hope you've liked it, you found it helpful, and I will go over some basic scripting in the next couple of videos. But first, I think I might want to show you how to modify existing resources, how to resprite items and stuff like that. Stay tuned for that, and if you have any questions or any suggestions on what I should cover as well, or if something's unclear, don't be afraid to ask in the comments and let me know what you want to know. So, Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, see you!